It's time we switch gears to a very important subject, and that is blockchain. Yes, our speakers are now going to deliberate on leveraging blockchain for enhanced business performance. So first up, to take the session forward, I'd like to invite our moderator on stage. Please put your hands together as I extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Aarti Srivastava, Chief Human Resource Officer at Capgemini India. And our speakers for this session, who would be joining us later, are Ms. Kalpana Bansal, Head Talent and AI Darwin Box. We can please put our hands together for them as well. Mr. Lakshmanan M, Head HR L&T Technology Services Limited. Mr. Ali Asgar Muchala, VP Group Portfolio India Capgemini. And Mr. Prashant Parashar, CHRO Potential Growth Technologies. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we discussed multi-generational workforce and a topic that consumes our lives these days. And with that, we will move on to a new aspect, a different aspect of HR mandate, the new HR mandate. And that's about technology in HR. We talk a lot about enhancing employee experience. We talk about organizational growth. We talk about multiple aspects of diversity, inclusion. Technology in HR sometimes does take a backseat in discussion, and we want to ensure that this aspect gets the right attention with the right forum. The moment we say blockchain, the first thing that comes to our mind is banks or financial institutions. So blockchain and HR, and how do we put them together in a more meaningful way? We will discuss it today, and you, of course, heard about the panel members, but before that, we will have a little micro masterclass on blockchain. So we will run the session in two formats. One, we will have micro masterclass by Ali on blockchain, who's our expert on that, technology and innovation. And then we will have industry experts to talk about the application of blockchain in HR. Without any ado, let me invite Ali on stage to talk about blockchain.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Look, I have the most difficult job of the day. Not because I'm here to do the masterclass or micro masterclass on blockchain. I believe it's the most difficult job because I'll be doing the micro masterclass on blockchain in 15 minutes. I don't think anybody could do justice to that. So what we will do instead, is I'll try and give an overall, just a high-level overview of what blockchain as a technology is, how it works, and how it can be leveraged in different scenarios. Just to make sure we are all on the same page, we are all have a common understanding, so that next up, when we actually discuss the different scenarios and use cases pertinent specifically to the HR industry, then at least we will have a common understanding. We will all be on the same page and be able to have that, get those insights from our industry experts better. All right. So first of all, before we go any further, just extending to Aarti's point on, the first thing that you think about from a blockchain perspective is banks and financial institutions. Blockchain is not the same as cryptocurrency or Bitcoins. Let me bust that myth right up front. Yes, of course. Blockchain is the technology upon which cryptocurrencies and more specifically Bitcoins are based on. As a matter of fact, when blockchain was initially invented, the first white paper was released several years back, it was actually in the context of cryptocurrency. So it is one of the first applications, implementations of the blockchain technology. But today, it is not just limited to banks and finance and cryptocurrency. There are several industries, several different use cases, and there's a much broader scope for blockchain and more specifically, as we will discover in the coming few minutes, more specifically also in the HR space. So then what is blockchain? So blockchain is a distributed ledger technology. In other terms, it is basically a shared database, right? Now, to understand this better, let me take an example that maybe we can all relate with better. Let's assume you're going out on a vacation with your group of friends. Yeah? Now, when you're going out, you've planned this vacation, all your friends, there'll be some expenses, somebody will be booking the tickets, somebody would have paid for the hotel accommodation, somebody would be paying for the meals, drinks, etc. At the end of it, you still need to manage those accounts, you still need to keep track of who's spent on what, and then sort of, total up, divvy up, and figure out who owes what when you eventually settle the account at the end of the trip. Typically, when you're doing this with your friends, what I've seen is in most friends group, there is one person who takes up the responsibility of being that Munimji, yeah, who keeps track of all of these expenses, all of these transactions that are happening at the end of the trip. That person, everybody who's spending will let that person know, and they'll keep a track, and at the end of it, you'll do the accounts. For a little more tech savvy, you will probably have a shared Excel, yeah, where everybody will go and put their expenses, and you can, some formulas and calculate. Or there are some apps, Splitwise and whatnot, where you can actually record all these transactions. Either of these cases, whether you're thinking about from an individual managing these accounts, or a shared Excel, or a ledger, or some app, irrespective, it is a central record that you are maintaining, where everybody is going and putting their transactions in, right? Now, this is fine. It's a central, shared, open record. Everybody can go and do it themselves. This is fine when you are within your known group of trusted people, your friends. Yeah? Let's assume you are doing this with some third parties. Obviously, this does not work over there, right? If you don't know the person, you cannot have an open, shared ledger where people can go and just record their actions, their transactions, and you're expected to trust. No. In that case, you typically look for an intermediary. Some designated, some authority, some sort of an organization, some entity which would validate these transactions. Think of credit cards, right? You have to make a payment from A to B. There's a bank who's issued you your card. They will record this transaction and make sure it gets happened. Same is the case with various different industry use cases across, when you talk about, and it's not just financial transactions that we are talking about. Let's assume we are talking about the government. Let's assume we are talking about a situation where there is an actual a contract, a deed, an agreement that you want to register, get it recorded on a stamp paper. You want that to be captured. Right, we talked about banks, but let's say if you're looking to apply for a loan, and the bank needs to get your credit validation done, your KYC done. Again, they need to reach out to some credit bureaus, etc., to get your credit scores and stuff like that. Healthcare, patient history. Very important for a physician to know the accurate historical details of a patient, all the medical history, etc., so that they can do the right diagnosis and right prescriptions for what next to do. Supply chain. You've bought something from a product from a shop. How do you know that what you're buying is the authentic piece, or it's not a duplicate product, it's not a copy of something? In all of these scenarios, again, very similar problem statement, right? You need to record all of this information so that you're not cheated, so that you're not, subject to fraud. And in all of these cases, typically it's a central authority, a central body that is doing all of these transactions, recording all of these transactions for you. And then when you have this central authority, there are obviously some disadvantages of doing that. A, that central authority is going to charge you for it. When you use your credit card, the bank charges you annual fee, right? When you're doing your credit validation. Per transaction, you have to pay for it. Also, because it's a central place, it's subject to theft, risk of loss of data, corruption even, right? So it's always easy to manipulate or even lose that data if it is there in a single place. Yeah? That's where blockchain technology comes in. As I said, blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, which basically means, it's basically, when you say, as the name suggests, blockchain, it's a chain of blocks where each block represents the piece of information, the data that you want to capture, you want to record and keep safe. Now, these blocks are arranged in a sequence, and the sequence is important because it also determines the order in which these actions, these transactions, these things have happened. So the sequence is also important. And what helps enable this is the structure of the block. Now, I'm sorry, I think the font, I'm not sure if it's visible at the back, but each block consists of 3 elements. One is the information itself that you're trying to record in that block. Second is a hash code, an auto-generated code, which is a derivative of the information that you've captured. If the information changes, the hash code also changes. Yeah, so it's a byproduct of the information itself. And the third piece is the previous hash code. So like I said, it is a sequence of events, the block that you're trying to add, the transaction, the action that is happening, record in this block, that block gets appended to the end of that chain. The previous hash code actually helps build this sequence. That's the previous block's hash code is what is stored in the next block's previous hash code field. So that's how the sequence is maintained. Now, as you can see, now because of this structure, inherently it is immutable, it is irrefutable. Yeah, it cannot be changed. Once you've recorded a transaction, you cannot go back and change that transaction. If there was a mistake, you have to add another transaction to counter the previous transaction. You cannot go and change the data from a record that is already being posted. And it is irrefutable. Right? Once it's there, it is actually approved and acknowledged by all the parties in that chain, and that's why it's also irrefutable. Why so? Because this entire chain that we are talking about is, again, like I said, it's decentralized. It's not maintained in one place. In fact, every entity, every user that's participating in that blockchain network actually has a copy of that entire chain, entire blockchain. So this entire chain is actually available, a copy of that with each of the users that are there in that network, right? So now think of it. If you want to tamper with it, not only do you need to actually make sure the whole sequence with the hash code and all is updated, but then you also need to hack into, if there are 1,000 users in that network, all of those 1,000 users' computers have to be hacked into to make sure that this data is actually synced up in all of those 1,000 users' devices. Otherwise, it will not match and the blockchain will fail, right? It will not be valid anymore. So that is what makes this extremely trustable and extremely a technology which you can rely on when you want to capture some information which is secure and you do not want it to be tampered with. Yeah? So that's what, in a nutshell, blockchain is. Now, I've obviously very, very oversimplified this. There are a lot of other details involved in this. So when I'm posting a transaction, for example, how does that transaction get validated? There's a concept of miners that will actually look at validating that transaction with the parties involved in that transaction before it is posted. Once it is posted, the platform is responsible for replicating it across all of the users that are part of that network, which basically means that there's also some amount of queuing up happening between transactions, because once, if multiple transactions happen at the same time, as I said, the sequence is important. The platform will pick one, process, validate, post, synchronize, and then pick the next. So there's also that, queuing up that can happen. And then there are various other nuances that get involved. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just leave it at this, what we've discussed so far. It is a shared database. It is a record of all the actions that have happened in a particular sequence. And it is something that is distributed, is available across hundreds and thousands of people within the network. So in that case, it becomes immutable and irrefutable. Now, just to summarize, it is, because it is decentralized, it's very difficult to manipulate or tamper with, which makes it more secure, and it's also extremely scalable. You may have as many number of users part of the network that those users may be spread across the globe. The technology will scale. And then obviously that gives you all of the benefits that we have talked about. Now, before we move to the actual discussion with our industry experts, let's just quickly summarize from an HR context perspective, right? So we've talked about this technology being used in capturing, maintaining, and validating this data in its original sense without it being tampered. How does that get used in the HR context? Think of it from the recruitment and onboarding perspective. You're vetting the candidates. You're going through the CVs. Could you leverage blockchain to validate the credentials of the candidate? Could you leverage blockchain to maintain the employee data? A big part of the employee onboarding is capturing and maintaining the employee information. Can that be automated and captured more securely using blockchain technology? And then, again, linking it back to the financials, right? Payroll processing, generating of the pay slips as well, and having an end-to-end view of all the R&R, et cetera, that has been processed for that particular employee during that entire year. All of that can be kept, managed, and analyzed in one single view through this blockchain technology. Right? We will talk about this and a lot more in our panel. So maybe I will pause there and invite Aarti to come and moderate our panel with us. Thank you.
Can I request other panel members to come on the stage, please?
Well, that was a fantastic masterclass when it comes to blockchain. Now inviting our other panel members. Right there we have Mr. Lakshmanan M, Head HR L&T Technology Services Limited. Let's put our hands together since they're already here on stage. Mr. Prashant Parashar, CHR of Potential Growth Technologies. A warm welcome to you, sir. And yes, of course, Ms. Kalpana Bansal, Head Talent and AI, Darwin Box. Over to our speakers to take this forward.
So thank you, and thanks, Ali. I think a lot of it has been demystified, why we are talking about blockchain in HR today. A larger organization, an organization which is focused on enhancing the experience for employees, will understand how great implementation of blockchain could be, and let's discuss with our panel members and what are the possibilities. Considering what Ali has just spoken about, I think this will be very useful technology for all the CHROs to look at the future of HR. And to start with, Lux, I just want to start with you. How do you think the CHROs can build their talent agenda using blockchain? And also, maybe you want to talk about a few examples from onboarding, recruitment Ali spoke about. You may want to look at some of the hire to retire, some points in an employee life cycle to implement this.
Sure, thank you. And first of all, very glad to be here. Blockchain is a technology that we've been hearing about over the last 8 to 10 years. And there were several efforts to utilize blockchain technology in HR, right? So very specifically, I think there was a great momentum for using blockchain for background verifications. About 8 years ago, NASSCOM took that on, National Skill Development Council took that on to put blockchain technology to make sure that companies don't have to do employee verification every time there's a change in employer, right? And so we put a lot of effort, but somehow it hasn't delivered to the full scale. But I'm hoping that that's one area where clearly blockchain can be leveraged, and the issue of employment verification still persists. And if you widen that a little more, the entire building a very credible talent ecosystem, right? And blockchain could help us with very, very credible talent ecosystem where you have validated talent. You know that this talent worked in this company, this talent studied in this university, and this talent did this kind of project or work or technology. And if you can able to get that talent ecosystem using blockchain technology, I think it'll be extremely useful for the industry. Couple of other points I can think of is, the data security has become a very, very big thing nowadays, and blockchain could help phenomenally in making sure the data is secure. Of course, there's a flip side, right? Every data that goes outside your organization requires extra layers of security and protection. There could be a data breach. But that said, I think the technology promises that it will be not breachable by the way those blocks are built and by the way the chain is established. So we're looking forward to leveraging that. And also, I think cross-border hiring, right? We are hiring so many people in different countries. It's become global. And when we are hiring people from different countries, it's extremely difficult to validate that particular talent's credible background, right? And if you can have blockchain capture that for us, I think the process of hiring cross-border, process of getting visas for people much faster. So those are areas that blockchain will definitely help. I'm looking forward to blockchain as a technology maturing in this country.
Absolutely, very pertinent topics that you're talking about, and especially now that we're working in a global environment, I think a very good example around that. But I'll continue with what you spoke about data privacy. And Kalpana, I will come to you. I think, in the recent years, we've been talking a lot about data privacy, employee personal information, and there are so many concerns around that. And how do we ensure that there is enough and more of it, especially for larger organizations when you have so many of, entries, exits, there's so much of data maintenance. How do you think the technology can really help us to secure that information and to have the right level of exposure and still the right level of hiding it?
So I'm going to keep this simple and break it into two parts. I work in AI, but I've also fortunately been a student of blockchain. I'll be very honest, I'll admit I found the technology difficult, right? So I decided it's not worth pursuing in terms of going into depth. But I did realize a few things, and I just want to clarify for the benefit of HR professionals. I started my career in HR. Privacy is not linked to the technology per se. It's a philosophical concept. Data privacy is about who can see what, who can access what, who can share what, with whom, at what level. Now, there are various levels in a technology stack where data privacy comes into play. So one of that is your cloud, right? You host something in a cloud. There are country-specific, nation-specific, state-specific regulations that restrict certain accesses at various points of time. Now, the way you build your technology also can create something called a role-based access or an attribute-level access, right? Blockchain has a third level of complexity because it does something called encrypting, or what you call cryptography, to ensure that your transaction or data is absolutely secure and cannot be read by anybody. And there is something called a permissioning or permissionless layer on that blockchain, which restricts who and what can see. Now, a combination of all of that determines the data privacy for the end user. So it is not an answer about whether it is blockchain, whether it is AI, whether it is your database. It is how your tech stack is determined for a particular outcome that will determine data privacy. But I'll come to a bigger problem here and a more interesting problem. I think we all create it as HR. I will talk about a client. A client of mine actually told me this. He says, you are a candidate, you are onboarding into the organization. Now, till then, he has a candidate ID. He has joined the organization, he becomes an employee on your system of records. But he says 5 minutes later, the candidate has changed his mind, he's an IT professional. Revert him back to being a candidate and lose track of the employee data. Now, can you do it? Yes, you can. What's the risk of doing it? Integrity of the data is lost. So it's not specific to technology, it's about the way you think about the data that determines privacy in my view. So that's my humble.
And Kalpana, I go through this almost every day. Some of my colleagues from IT industry are sitting here with the joining ratio. This is a daily situation that, people are supposed to join, their ID are created, and then they don't join. And it's a very serious problem because tomorrow there could be an audit and we could land in a soup. And it's very important that we implement the right measures to take care of these things. Let me bring in another topic that Lax talked about. It was more about, contracts and some of the breaches of the data. But specifically about contract breaches, Prashant, if I have to look at, and sometimes we also have, we are guided by different acts. There could be Minimum Wages Act and misclassification of workers. These kind of situations that we keep coming across around compliance, which is a very, very big part of whole HR organization. How do we implement blockchain in this area to have an effective implementation?
Yeah, so let me first answer the misclassification part. When an employee joins, the employee will go through several promotions, career changes, and it may move from band 1 to band 2 to band 3, or sometimes full-time to part-time to full-time to part-time, and different classes or of employee. A blockchain creates a chain which is a permanent record, which cannot be changed. And it creates an audit trail, which is very simple to verify. So that's specifically about misclassification. I'll talk about three examples here. Two, of course, is about employee data and employee-related. One is customer data, and if it can happen to customer data, it can happen to employee data. Without naming the company and the industry, etc., it has been going around for the last couple of days that a CXO has resigned in a company for apparently because of unpleasant experience. And the resignation letter is floating around on the WhatsApp university, on social media, everywhere. Had this been, an application on blockchain technology, this would reach relevant parties only on the need-to-know basis. Being in HR, I'm sure most of us would agree that a resignation letter should not be floating around in the open in media. Yeah? So this is example one. Example two, few months back, there was a serious data breach of customers in a healthcare, health insurance company. And there were enough evidences that, the data was sold outside. 25 years back, when BPO industry ITS started, in Gurgaon and parts of Bombay, when we had the taxi and cab service to employees, and they used to get a sheet, these employees would board that need to be picked up and dropped, and their phone number, etc. These used to be sold for 50 rupees. 1 day's data of employee, phone number, mobile number was sold by the cab drivers for 50 rupees. Another example, and we have this a lot in tech companies and especially in startups and early stage companies where reduction in force happens. It's unfortunately the economic condition and the business condition because of which reduction in force happens. And you see list of employees available to be interviewed with their name, city, location, phone number, email ID, specialty, skills, etc. These are serious breaches, serious breach. Today, we can say that because the law is relatively lax here, and it's a matter of time that we will also have, something as strong as GDPR, as strong as anywhere else in the world which makes it mandatory for organizations and authorities to secure employee data and personally identifiable data. And this is where blockchain can play a significant role in protecting information, data, because of 4 key factors. One is the transparency in the blockchain technology. The data is completely immutable. Yeah. Second is the accountability. Anyone who has access or who sees the data, it's known who, when, where, what, and to what extent. So this cannot be, remain a mystery. Third is automation. You can automate the entire process. So for example, you have a freelance expert or you have a gig expert or someone who needs to be paid based on certain achievements or milestones. Now all these can be built as a smart contract. And there are organizations which have used in supply chain where the entire thing, the payment is made basis conditions being met. And the conditions being met could be humidity, temperature, transportation time. So similar thing can be applicable for people and employees as well. That these are the conditions, these are the milestones. If these are achieved, go ahead and make the payment. These are smart contracts. And next is, the auditability. The entire thing becomes easily auditable with, I would say based on my knowledge, no possibility of tampering, but Ali will have the last word there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prashant. And I will give Ali the last word. But Ali, before we get to the last word, I just want to know, we're all excited about it. See, as HR leaders and CHROs, I think we're grappling with 2-3 aspects of balancing. While we are trying to create a culture, and while we are trying to create a future of work, looking at how do we create purposeful leadership, looking at how do we create diverse environments, we're still grappling with the transactional issues of security, looking at how do we have secure candidature of people, how do we have secure onboarding. But, while we discuss this, where do you think are the new frontiers of blockchain technology? And while you spoke about scalability, but will there be a larger integration of AI or Internet of Things with blockchain and help us to reduce the transactions in this area?
Thank you, Aarti. Absolutely, yes. I think for a technologist, it's the most exciting time to be there in. Yes, Lax mentioned blockchain has been around for a while. Kalpana alluded to some of the complexities that are there associated with it, largely because of the other technologies around it in the entire technology ecosystem that have been evolving for the past few years around cloud, AI, cybersecurity, IoT as well. But today, the level at which all of these have matured and evolved, I think it opens up a whole host of opportunities, infinite possibilities really for us to leverage. I'll cite a couple of examples. Maybe, I talked about the supply chain use case even. Let's say I am looking to purchase something which needs to be maintained. It's a delicate item. It needs to be maintained in a particular condition. Let's say I'm perishable goods, let's say food or maybe a medicine which needs to be maintained at a particular temperature, right, for it to be effective. Now, when I'm going to the chemist shop and purchasing it, I can probably look at it and see, yeah, fine, it's refrigerated or whatever, and it's in the right state. But what's the assurance that all the way from the point that it was manufactured in the factory, packaged, shipped, warehouses, and coming to this store and lying in their store for so many weeks, it has actually maintained that precondition, that the condition in which it needs to be maintained. It's today, with leveraging technologies like IoT, cloud, it's a no-brainer. You simply put a temperature sensor, let's say, on the package. You have a little bit of a Raspberry Pi thing there with network connectivity, which can keep posting all of these on the cloud. When you go there, you scan the QR code, and it gives you the entire history of that product all the way from its manufacturing till the time you've just scanned it, everything that it went through. And you will have that assurance that, yes, this is actually in the right state, and I can probably use this. And we're talking about these things, it might sound a little, adding sensor, a little bit of a Raspberry Pi and all. Trust me, today the way they've been commoditized, you can get these for like, few hundreds, $100, yeah? And if you're buying a piece of, a medicine or something which costs thousands, paying an additional few $100 to just get that assurance is something that anybody would be willing to do. That's the kind of opportunities that technology, the ecosystem overall, opens up. And you can apply that in the HR space, right? We're looking at a candidate tomorrow that somebody goes and gives a technical certification, a cloud certification. They go and claim that they've worked in XYZ company for that many years. Right? If all of those records are maintained on the blockchain and available on the fly, I can literally scan it and get the information accurately captured right that minute. No need for a 3-month, 4-month background verification process and none of that, right? So yeah, I mean, it opens up infinite opportunities for sure.
I hear that. And, of course, it creates a lot of excitement as well. There's another challenge that we keep seeing, and Kalpana, I come back to you. There's a challenge around hybrid workforce that we are seeing. Yeah, a lot of us work for the organizations where we are managing remote workforce. We are managing hybrid workforces. It's not easy to manage everything in such an environment, and especially the whole implementation of this technology in a hybrid environment. How do you foresee that?
It's interesting, right? In my earlier avatar as part of Reliance doing technology digitization, one of our dream projects was actually getting the entire contract workforce of India on one platform, and blockchain seemed like the perfect answer, because in the perfect world, if everybody was traceable in a sense, and everybody was auditable, and you knew which casual worker worked where, at what point of time, life would have been perfect, correct? But welcome to reality, welcome to India, welcome to the way HR people think, welcome to the way taxation kind of impacts what we do. First challenge number one, nobody really wants to be paid because taxes will be deducted. So they'll say, hybrid and remote workers generally say, okay, chacha ke naam pe bill de do, auntie ke naam pe bill de do, mummy ke naam pe bill de do. So your audit trail is always incomplete because it looks like you've earned only 30,000 rupees, but you've actually made 10 lakhs, correct? That's one. So you have what you call fragmented data points. Second, your vendor ecosystem is highly, highly fragmented and not transparent. And when I say vendor ecosystem, I mean your contractors who manage workforces. Some of them have them on roll, some of them have them off roll, some of them have a sister concern, some of them route it through somewhere else. There are companies that I don't wish to name which have vendors which actually don't do any work but are still paying contract workforce. So there are what you call false workforce actually doing the rounds in large companies. when we did an audit trail of the entire stakeholder ecosystem and see the critical point for blockchain to work, it's a peer-to-peer network, which simply means there are multiple parties who are validating a transaction, there are multiple parties who are certifying that something has happened, correct? And like he pointed out, there's a hashtag to the next transaction and a hashtag on the existing transaction, and you cannot remove that transaction, you cannot make it vanish. If you have to change a transaction, you have to append the transaction. And now here's the problem. Look at 3 crore workforce, a 3 crore to 10 crore workforce, which is largely disorganized, speaks in regional languages, and whom you are paying by the hour, by the day, by whatever, and trying to create an ecosystem of the employed workforce of the India, and you will realize the proportion of the problem. Add to that is the complexity or the challenge of computational expertise required to make this happen. And then how do you onboard all stakeholders? And that can happen in a perfectly tax-free world where everybody is paying 5% tax and goes home happy. But otherwise, I think the challenges are because it's a larger policy level deliberation that is beyond the technology. The technology is just a facilitating mechanism.
Very rightly put. But at the same time, when we talk about the facilitation of these things as well, there, in the last few years, and I'll, look at technology to help us facilitate few aspects of HR, and I come to you, Lux, for that. Think about it. In the last few years, the issues that we have grappled with, there has been moonlighting, it continues, yeah? And then we have also dealt with and are dealing with impersonification of data, some frauds around coffee badging. There's so many things that, these days we keep hearing about and we keep grappling with because you can't let it go. You can't let go of these topics. As HR leaders, you have to set the right examples and set the right culture of the organization. How do you curb these kind of frauds? Have you thought of this technology around these topics?
I mean, I wanted to leave 2 points for all of us to think about from embracing blockchain technology. It, of course, promises a lot. And, one of the thought is, can we put blockchain in the hands of the employees? In a sense that if each employee tries to create their own tokens, right? And if they decide to say, use my token for an employment, right? Or use my token for a background verification. You get instant verification. You get your bank account open instantly. If Aadhaar can do it, why can't we have blockchain technology where employees could have their own tokens, right? That's one thought I wanted to leave on the table. Perhaps blockchain will get embraced much faster. 2, I think, we speak about sustainability a lot. So if we say that I want to avoid all the papers and all that goes with filing visas or getting employees onboarded and having paperless, visas and paperless medical claims and paperless, whatever, everything, right? If we can put the sustainability dimension and say to each Indian or each global citizen that, please embrace this, I think the world will be a better place.
Max, thank you very much. And, that was absolutely a point to think how much of technology can be put in the hands of employees and what is the level of accesses that we need to create. But when I talk about the transparency in this whole process and in this whole chain, there are few aspects where transparency is important, and there are few aspects where you have to ensure that the employees have information that is relevant to them and only relevant to them. And there are processes around, career progression. There are processes around compensation, training, performance. Of course, we want transparency, but we don't want everybody to see each other's, performance assessment or, what is the level of information that we can create around access. When we think of these topics, where do you think blockchain comes into play?
So, let me give you one basic fact which many of us would not like. And we now have reality that, 100,000 employee company, 200,000, 300,000 employee company, fortunately, the IT world. Most of the career-related decisions, whether it is mobility, whether it is selection on a project, happens based on 2 factors. One, tribal knowledge. I know this person has worked in this technology and this industry and did a good job. So that's a tribal knowledge. The second is the proficiency of the person in use of Excel. Yeah, and these two are very dangerous. The first one creates a lot of bias. The second one, Excel has been in use for so many years, but no one has been an expert. Yeah. I still claim sometimes that I was able to do a pivot table very well. The fact is, for mobility, promotion, utilization, we need to know what are the skills, what are the certification, what kind of experiences. This can be very well solved by blockchain in a tamper-proof manner. And the entire selection process, in fact, the delivery or the service to the customer and client becomes so better that everything is verifiable. I have in the recent 8 years, whatever certifications I have gone through, I have my certificates on blockchain. It's visible on LinkedIn. It's trusted. Why can't we have a system where it is transparent, it is secure? Number two, rewards and recognition for any kind of significant achievement other than small token of appreciation. In fact, that can also be there because we all talk about creating a culture of gratitude, empathy. So entire rewards and recognition can be there on the network, and based on what kind of skills you need, what kind of experiences you need, you can easily verify, filter, get it free from any kind of biases. Third is increased ownership of data. The employee then takes ownership of maintaining the data because it works in his or her favor. Today, I can vouch for most of the HR teams that any employee database that needs to be updated, it's such a massive exercise of follow-up, dashboards, weekly reviews. It's such a pain. And for what? For a small data updation. So the ownership of data comes to the employee. What is the benefit to the company? Significantly improve talent management practices, career mobility practices, and creating multiple options of decision making to find the right talent beyond relying on the tribal knowledge or the Excel skills of someone.
Thank you, Prashant. And I think we have covered some very pertinent topics related to HR and the implications of technology on that. Ali, any last words before we close the session?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of scenarios in the entire HR employee life cycle, right away from recruitment, onboarding, monthly pay cycles and rewards, and also the exit. We discussed the potential of blockchain to be leveraged there. But I think what is more important is that one company or one organization trying to do that will not work. I think it is the entire consortium, it's the industry that needs to make that collective step forward, make some commitments in the sense that, X percentage of our employee management, HR management functions, we will look to automate using blockchain. And once that starts happening, you will see a much faster rate of adoption. And I think this is the right forum to have this discussion and trigger that thought. How much are you willing to commit and leverage this technology in your organizations?
Thank you. So I think, Ali, the point is that, we are all committed to that. We are all discussing this topic. There is a lot of passion around this topic, and very clearly that, we want to make those changes. As you rightly said, Prashant, we are looking at multiple aspects of employee life cycle, and we are grappling with things like employee data updation. It is the reality. We can talk about very big things. We can talk about the new HR mandates. We can talk about the future of workforce. We can talk about all big things. But the fact is that we are still spending a lot of time on these topics where technology can really help. And I think we all need to come together, and as Ali said, the whole industry needs to come together for the right implementation to be able to create the right chain of information, data, processes, and leverage technology as much as possible. Any questions from the audience that we can take? Maybe one question. And the rest, the industry experts are here around. You can, of course, catch them if you want to talk to them.
Hi, this is Kriti. I am from Infosys. It was a very insightful discussion, something which I was looking forward to. I do have one question, and it's more from a compliance perspective. So now in an organization which is spread across multiple geographies, every geography has a certain statute, a certain regulation, a certain law that you have to meet. There are instances wherein, these laws and regulations, they change instantly within a snap. And you have to turn around to that. You have to make that, possible within a very short span of time. In an organization, in a large organization today as ours, I think what we do is we do look at in terms of, the kind of impact that it would create at an individual employee level, the kind of impact that it would create in other downstream applications, and where is it that you have to actually look at that impact, and then is wherein, you basically turn it around within that time. But I want to understand, can blockchain help with that, or how is it that we can go about this, addressing this particular thing, wherein the turnaround time is slow and it's a statute, so you have to meet it. There is no other option.
Kriti, thank you for your question. I know blockchain can help this, but I'll let the panel members answer this question. Anyone of you would like to answer this question?
Look, I think the compliance, the regulatory constraints, I think many times, from a blockchain implementation perspective, it is also more specific from a finance industry perspective. But if you're looking at it from the use case that we are talking today from an HR perspective, I don't think that comes as at all even a roadblock or anything that can stop you from leveraging it. Today, let's say if you were looking at background verification, you are going to an agency who will get you the background verification details done for the person that you're looking to recruit, whatever time it takes. There is no compliance that tells you that, okay, you have to go with XYZ agency or XYZ. You go with the reputed firm, they go through their process and they come up and you take those inputs. You leverage blockchain as a technology to help you automate that. There is no constraint or regulation that stops you from doing that at all. So absolutely not. I don't see any reason why any of these regulatory issues or compliances come as a hurdle or something that could prevent you from leveraging blockchain at all.
It's the interoperability. Yes, sure, Kalpana. It's just the integration of technologies that can help this whole situation that you're talking about. Yeah. Yes.
Exactly the point that you were saying. Let me just kind of simplify it from a product perspective. So typically any ERP or any HR solution, there's something called a database at the bottom, right? Now your database is either a SQL database or a cloud-based, whatever. Nowadays we are going towards MongoDB. Now think of that database changing into a blockchain. Right? So what does the blockchain keep? It keeps the bits of data and it keeps a pointer to the back and the future. How does a compliance change trigger something? Let's say it's a change in PF laws, and today the 12.5 changes to 15. So from the next day, you have to change 15. Typically in any ERP solution, this is what you call a rule-based change, which is made at some other level on the platform, that immediately implements itself in terms of further transactions in the payroll, and hence new computations on the payroll blocks will be at the rate of 15%, and the transaction will be recorded as a change. Possibly you could even have another block which leads to an audit trail just on the changes in the rules, which will be in another block. The two blocks talk to each other like you talk in terms of a rule-based set of rules and a series of transactions, right? I hope I simplified it.
Thank you, Kalpana. And I think we are at the end of the session. It was wonderful for me, a lot of excitement around this topic, and I think it's imperative that all the HR leaders and CHROs and CXOs really look at how we can implement technology. With the rapid advancement of, Gen AI coming in, Internet of Things coming in, things that we had never imagined, of course, sky is the limit. So we move forward, and I really, thank the lovely panel for such fantastic discussion around this technology, and I really hope that all of you've taken some insights back to think forward and to see how we can implement the technology in HR more effectively. Thank you very much. Thank you for being such a good audience.
Thank you. Can we have some really big cheers and a round of applause for all our speakers for really deliberating on how blockchain technology is really revolutionizing HR practices and is also driving and enhancing the business performance right there. With that, may I please invite on stage Ms. Mallika Mutreja to join us and felicitate all our speakers with a memento, a token of appreciation. All our speakers right there. We'd like to thank Mr. Lakshmanan M., Head HR, L&T Technology Services Limited. We'd also like to thank our moderator for really weaving that whole conversation for us, Ms. Aarti Srivastava, Chief Human Resource Officer, Capgemini India. We'd like to thank Mr. Ali Asghar Muchala, Vice President, Group Portfolio India, Capgemini, for also taking the masterclass forward for us. We'd also like to thank Ms. Kalpana Bansal, Head Talent and AI Darwin Box. And also would like to thank Mr. Prashant Parashar, CHRO Potential Growth Technologies.